All right, time for your business news now with Ropiwa Madzena, who joins me in studio. Ropiwa, this is a fascinating subject because it's about what municipalities owe Eskom.
Yeah.
We know Eskom needs every cent it can find, but at the same time, there is clearly a plan on the table to take the burden away from a number of municipalities who are practically bankrupt.
Yeah, and it's not small change. Combined, they owe almost 60 billion rand to Eskom. And I mean, like you say, Eskom could use every single cent that it can get its hands on. And that is our focus this hour. Municipalities owe Eskom about 57 billion rand. However, they will soon get respite from National Treasury, but with very strict conditions. National Treasury is willing to write off about a third of that debt over the next 3 years if municipalities who apply for debt relief comply with the rising tariffs and improved debt collection. During this period, Eskom will have to hold any related legal proceedings. For more on this, we're joined by Kevin Lings, Chief Economist at Stanlib. Kevin, as always, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I mean, this is almost 60 billion rand in debt that we're talking about here. So how realistic do you think this plan is, and could it work to recover any lost funds for Eskom in the long run?
So as you say, the amount of money is huge. I think it amounts to 57 billion. That's very significant. It's very clear that a large portion of that debt will never be repaid. So that does suggest that government's got to come up with some realistic alternative. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking about this year in, year out and find no resolution to it. What National Treasury has put on the table is a resolution, is something that could work. The problem is, are the municipalities going to be able to comply with the conditions? I think the conditions are pretty much the right mix of items. They're very onerous. They put the responsibility in the hands of the municipality. If the municipality wants the debt reduction, then they have to do the hard work. They have to make sure that they collect the proceeds for water and electricity, and they have to pay that over to Eskom. And they have to do that before they get the debt relief. They're not going to get the debt relief up front. And they have to be consistent and persistent with that improvement. And if they're willing to do all of that, then there is an upside to them. So will it work? It's going to be hard because obviously we've established this long time period in which people haven't been paying for electricity and water and other services. And now you've got to come up with a mechanism that will somehow entice people within various municipalities to start to pay, which means you've got to enforce cutoffs of electricity much more rigorously. You've got to get out and communicate with citizens and explain what this is all about. So I'm skeptical. I think it's a good initiative. It has the potential to help, but I would be skeptical as to the success that it will achieve within a short period of time.
Yeah, and I mean, one of those important conditions, Kevin, is the issue of debt collection. You're right when you say there's been this culture that's been established over years now where people are left to get away with non-payment for the services that they get. So what kind of oversight would be needed here? You've mentioned cutting off electricity where necessary and water, but for customers, what else do you reckon would work here just to make sure that municipalities are meeting those minimum requirements set out by Treasury?
So in the requirements are things like installing prepaid meters as a way to try and get or elicit the payment, and to be much more rigorous when people aren't paying for electricity, to immediately act on that and start to cut people off. So beyond that, there's not a whole lot that can be done, right? And obviously, it's up to each municipality to try and implement that within their own area. Now, this is coming at a very difficult stage because households are under enormous pressure as it is. We know the cost of living is very high, interest rates have gone up. And so most households don't have a huge amount of extra funds to try and increase these types of payments. And so the economic backdrop makes this especially challenging. If we were trying to do this in a more buoyant economic environment where jobs were being created and there was a little bit more cash around, then maybe I think we would have a more chance of success. So I think for most households, this is going to be very difficult, and it's going to take a lot of effort from municipalities, a lot of enforcement, a lot of commitment to the process to try and make inroads into the whole issue of a culture of non-payment.
And of course, this initiative by National Treasury, Kevin, isn't an indication by National Treasury that municipalities are to blame for the collapse at Eskom. Obviously, the issues there or the financial mismanagement goes deeper than just the municipal debt. But your thoughts on this initiative and what it may do to Eskom's financial standing and ultimately to some form of economic contribution, because I think that's at the center of restoring Eskom at this stage.
Absolutely. So this has undoubtedly contributed to the financial woes that Eskom has experienced. You can't simply have 57 billion rands worth of debt that is not paid in the South African context. That's going to put any entity under enormous pressure. And so, yes, you can't blame the municipalities for necessarily Eskom's entire financial position, but clearly at a municipal level, they haven't been applying the rules rigorously. They haven't been utilizing the funds they've been collecting effectively. They've allowed for the non-payment to continue. So there's if we kind of dish in our blame, there's blame to go around in every area here. And so I think this is partly to try and improve the position for Eskom. And undoubtedly, government has already done a significant amount in terms of debt relief, and this is part of that. But there's another big element to this, and that is to improve municipal finances. We have to be in a position where municipalities can fund themselves. And so if you look at one of the conditions that's been put in place, is that money collected by the municipality for water and electricity has to be kept separate, has to be ring-fenced, so that the municipality can't delve into those funds to then use for other payments. That way you can better ensure that that money is transferred across to Eskom and other relevant entities. And so it's kind of identifying that in order to improve municipal finances, municipalities themselves have to do the hard lifting of the improvement.
Yeah, and of course, an important component which you touched on very briefly would be the imposition of those tariffs as they are announced every financial year. That's going to need to happen as well. But I wonder how easy it will be for a household, given the high inflationary pressures that we are facing. That particular condition is going to be a difficult one to implement.
Yeah, I agree. Under current circumstances, extremely challenging. I mean, as it is, we think that there's much more indication of distress credit going on. By that, I mean, people are delving into the use of credit because they can't meet their daily expenses. And now you're going to have an 18% increase in electricity tariffs in the middle of this year. And that's going to come at the exact time that you're going to ask a huge number of households to start to pay for electricity when they haven't necessarily been paying consistently in the past. You can just see how that's going to be problematic. And obviously there will be, unfortunately, some municipalities who just find it too difficult to implement and therefore don't make any progress whatsoever. And if I look at the proposal that National Treasury has put out, it's unclear what happens to those municipalities. If this whole thing fails, what is the consequence? And you can't simply go about saying, well, I'm going to cut off the entire municipality from electricity supply. There are legal cases that have been heard and judgments delivered that says that you can't necessarily do that. So I think that this needs everybody to play their bit. And if along the way there's a significant pushback, the whole process of improving municipal and Eskom finance will fall flat. We can't continue on trying to get a range of services and simply not pay for them. And we had, to be honest, we had the same problem within Gauteng in terms of the freeway project system. And at some point there was no alternative. That money had to be scrapped. It's not a bad thing in itself, as long as you can implement then a better system that can be adhered to. In this case, it's going to be onerous to implement that system effectively.
Very interesting insights, Kevin. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. That is Kevin Lings, Chief Economist at Stanlib, talking to us about those conditions set by National Treasury around the scrapping of Eskom's municipal debt.